My name is Dalton Ruhr. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect here at Qlik, and today I'm continuing my series on SaaS enablement. Today we're specifically going to be looking at how we can do mashups like this one that we've done for a series on Peloton through a SaaS tenant just as easily. So I've got this incredibly powerful, albeit very simplistic mashup. I want to show you how this is integrated through SaaS. So here is my actual SaaS application, and you'll see if I make selections, it shows in one app. If I select them in my mashup, it shows in my real tenant because it's really talking to the SaaS tenant. Now you might be thinking I tried to sync this up or something. I want to show you that this really is it. So if I go to my data load editor, what I can do is I've got some very simplistic numbers here. So I'm going to change A to where it's a much bigger number just so that you can see that this actually works. Hey, look at that. Well, if you notice, I've got this set up as a partial load script. So I can do partial loads, and you'll notice here in my full reload like I just did, I load A, B, and C. But if I were to do a partial reload, it's going to load these values, and I'm going to add AD. Well, let me go ahead and go back to my screen here, because you'll see not only do I have a chart, I have an extension. One of the ones, if you watch my training video on enablement for extensions, I've added this so that I can do these partial reloads on the fly. So I'm actually going to click that reload from my mashup, and voila, my data is now kept in sync. Now I'm sure you're saying, hey, that's fantastic, but how do I do it? It's probably super complicated. Well, I assure you it really isn't. So I'm going to go into the developer hub where you would work on your ordinary mashups, and I want to show you there's a small configuration change you're going to need to make at the top of your JavaScript. You're going to need to point the host not to your local host or one of your Windows servers. You're going to point it to your SaaS tenant, and it's going to require you to give it a web integration ID. We'll take a look at that in a second. But one of the things, if you're familiar with, you normally pick your applications and you can drag or drop these. That's the beautiful thing about what the mashup editor allows you to do, is once you configure your style sheet and your HTML, you can just drag or drop your apps. Well, we're not really pointing to the app with the REST API here, so you're going to have to do those things manually. Oh no! How do I get the application ID for an app that I want to open? Oh yeah, it's right in the header and the literal URL for the application. How do I get the object ID that I want to use? Oh no, how would I do that? Well, that's pretty simple too. If you go to the hover bar and you right click and you choose share, you'll notice that it actually gives you an embed option now that you would be able to copy that URL if you were using an iframe version. But if I were to scroll back, you'll see that it has an object ID. It gives me the object. Hey, that looks the same as this object ID. So while this part of editing mashups isn't quite as drag or drop as what it used to be, if you love using mashups or referring to things embedded in other applications, you still have that choice. Now, I told you that we were going to come back to this web integration ID part of our configuration up here. So this is a line that you would add because normally this would never have been there in the past. And we get to that through our management console. So if you've watched my first video, you'd notice that you just go up to this little icon here and you're going to choose Management Console. And what I'm going to do is come down here to Integration. And I'm going to go to Web, and what I need to do is create a web integration. Well, you'll see that I've already created this one that I'm using, but I'm going to walk through and we're going to say that this is from ClickDork's personal server. And I would need to give it a name like clickdork.com or something. And if I add this, I can add other origins as well. If I've got different names, I would create that and you would see that I would get a new web integration ID. Well, the beautiful thing is this web integration ID you would just paste right there. So unlike the API keys, you don't have to remember it originally because you'll just see it in the list. And of course, I'm not really going to connect to this from my personal server, so I'm going to get rid of that. But that web integration ID through integration here in the management console is how you can very, very simply transfer applications that you might be servicing, embedding locally, and still be able to take advantage of that kind of technology, but through your SaaS tenant. Hope you have a lot of fun.